It's a good afternoon to you then. Welcome to On Point. My name is Arabile Kumete. We join us now as we unpack this market picture. We're live here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange then, of course. As we unpack this market picture, a bit of a mixed one out, particularly out in Asia. In fact, it's actually all negative, with Japan having still been closed in for a public holiday on that front. So the main markets across most of Asia going down. Another negative day, unfortunately, for the banking counters there. Some nervousness still afoot in that market. So down went the Hang Seng around 1%. Shanghai Composite 1.33% weaker as well. So negativity there. That negativity though wasn't what were filtered through to the European market though. More than 1% gained now for the DAX out in Germany, with the FTSE 100 also enjoying some good gains, even if it is only slight, going up more than 10 points there at present in this lunchtime trade. 0.4% higher as well for the CAC 40. On the local index, well, slowly creeping higher after the negativity of yesterday. 53,438 points, 0.2% higher. Some of the biggest gainers today, certainly the banking counters, which have pushed up the financials overall, more than 1% to the good there, while industrials are 1.33% stronger as well today. So some good numbers on that front. Resources though, 1.5% weaker, unfortunately, today. Not buying into the story of the gold miners and the platinum miners, which together have actually fallen more than 3% each as well there. So massive falls on that front. South Africa's listed property continues to languish, feeling the effects then of COVID-19. Massmart, HCI, Pepkor, some of the big gainers today, going up more than 7% is the big retailer Massmart there, 7.33%, sitting at 30 Rand and 46 cents a share. 35 Rand 30 is HCI at present. That's gone up more than 5% as well today. Pepkor, so 4.68% to the good on that front. In red though, some of the mining companies that I've spoken about a little bit earlier, the likes of Impala Platinum, Exxaro, also sitting in negativity there. More than 5% lost across the board here. Hyprop, Hammerson also, unfortunately, feeling the effects there. Onto the commodities board then, more than 1% gain for Brent crude, 1.2% higher there, $41.92 a barrel. Not really too much to write home about. Of course, the supply coming back on the table yesterday from the likes of Libya, but questions then around the increased number of COVID-19 cases means that demand may continue to slack, although people have gone back to work perhaps in the Gulf of Mexico as the hurricane out on that side, the tropical storm there, loses its strength then and not really doing too much. That's Tropical Storm Delta there. Platinum going up today, more almost 1%, $889 a fine ounce at present, with gold also sitting slightly down, unfortunately, just above that 1900 mark. Of course, having sat a little bit earlier above $2,000 a fine ounce there. So big drop from those figures. And your currencies, strength from the local currency, having seen that more than 3% fall yesterday as well. Fell as much as 3.3% at some stage, wiping out the last month's gains as well. So not looking too good on that front. But we're back up a little bit, or more than 1% stronger for the South African currency, 16.59 against the US dollar. Euro will set you back 19.51. The pound is 21 Rand 32 cents. Well, this afternoon we're joined by Bianca Buertas from Peregrine Treasury Solutions, and she joins us via video link as well as we unpack this market picture a little bit. Let's start off where I ended off then as well. Bianca, it's a good afternoon to you. South African currency getting a little bit stronger, but still nervousness from around the world then, as that banking saga seems to continue to create some jitters around the market.
Good afternoon, Arabile. Absolutely, the Rand's clawing back a bit of ground after that massive sell-off we had witnessed yesterday. And as you're rightly pointing out, that banking saga is definitely causing a bit of jitters in the market. And that, coupled with the new wave of COVID-19 cases in Europe as well as in the UK, is certainly not doing any favors for risk sentiment at this point.
Yeah. Where does this risk sentiment sort of end, or what is it based on? Is it the fact that we perhaps don't really have a vaccine, that the market isn't really basing itself on anything other than the hopes that we'll continue to see a stimulus effort out of the United States, and yet Congress there is still struggling to put one together?
Absolutely. So from a fiscal stimulus perspective, what you'll see is that the Congress is still gridlocked in terms of getting to a conclusion there. All eyes on the Fed, absolutely, with the next couple of days of testimony. So markets definitely waiting to see whether the Fed is going to deploy further stimulus there. And then obviously this fear around risk sentiment is driven by the potential of the UK and Europe both potentially going back into a hard lockdown, and what that would mean for international trade as well as global economic growth.
Yeah, one always asks the question around fair value, though, for this local currency. And having seen maybe a slight correction in the local currency today, considering it was hard sell-off yesterday, would this perhaps be close to that fair value, or are we perhaps still a long way off in either direction?
I think when we start looking at the risk environment we are operating in at the moment, and as many would call it the new normal of the financial markets, 1680 is a lot closer to where we should be trading as the local currency. But I do think, once we start focusing on local fundamentals in isolation and we start moving towards midterm budget statements as well as the budget next year, we could actually see the rand weaken from these levels closer to about the 1750, 1780 mark, as investors actually start taking into consideration the fiscal dilemma that South Africa finds itself in. But as you rightly pointed out, these levels are certainly a lot closer to where we should be trading.
Yeah, that makes it sound a little scary. It was only the British pound or the euro that's supposed to be trading at 18 odd against the US dollar. Now we might, against rather the South African currency. Now it's going to be the dollar as well then, which might head in that direction. A little scary to say the least. If we just unpack the oil price just a little bit as well, then we're now sitting just above $40 a barrel, still within a tight range here. Is this the new normal for that oil price? No more than $45 a barrel, really?
What we can expect in the oil price is definitely for it to currently lie in these levels until we actually see a correction in demand going forward. What is needed for that demand to be stimulated is for economies around the world to actually get back onto par and post-COVID levels. And definitely until we actually see that full functioning of economies, that full demand that we witnessed prior to COVID-19, the oil price will continue to take strain due to oversupply. And
I suppose it just means good news for us, though, in many ways. But is it a healthy set of good news when we talk about South Africa's petrol price? Of course, the rand-dollar exchange rate will matter quite a lot as well on this one.
So when the oil price declines, it's always good news for South Africans, especially if we have a fairly stable currency, because then you will see a decline in fuel prices locally. However, should the rand continue to weaken against the dollar and we start pushing above that 17 mark again, a lot of the gains in the oil price will actually be offset by our losses in terms of our currency for importing the oil to produce fuel locally. So, it's a bit of a trade-off there, but any reduction in cost coming into the country is always good news for South Africans.
Yeah, certainly always is. Just in terms of value then as well then, Bianca, not much to write home about today when it comes to equity news, but perhaps sectors we could look towards to say there might be some gains in this sector. South Africa's listed property has fallen off quite prodigiously over the last couple of months, particularly because of COVID-19 and the like. Would that be perhaps a sector to look towards for some sort of gains, even if it is for 12 to 18 months or so, considering it's fallen off just far too much, surely?
So I think what we need to consider when looking at the listed property space is that it is so dependent on retail demand, specifically in the retail sector. And if you look at consumer spending and household spending as a whole, looking at the GDP figures from last month, that actually dropped down by about 50%, putting massive strain on a lot of your retailers. Also in terms of office space, we've seen a lot of work from home instances, and that has made corporates question whether or not they need a lot of the office space that is currently being occupied. This, of course, has put massive pressure on the share prices of these listed property funds. However, these funds will continue to look forward to provide value to investors, and they're doing quite a bit of work in restructuring and making sure that they are actually able to provide those dividend yields that investors typically look for in these funds. So it's definitely a long-term investment to look at, especially on the local front.
Yeah, I don't know if you've actually seen, though, Bianca, as well, just very quickly to perhaps get your thoughts, the Tongaat saga, where they're looking to sell a part of their business then as well to Barloworld for 5.35 billion rand. That's set to actually go ahead now at this point in time. An independent expert saying that the COVID-19 pandemic has not been sufficient to derail Tongaat Hewlett's sale of its starch unit to Barloworld. This is good news for Tongaat, who have got a heavy debt burden right now, don't they?
Absolutely. I think any transaction that they can finalize and conclude where they can settle some of that debt on their balance sheet would definitely filter in positively for the group, especially given the environment that they have been functioning in over the past couple of months with that saga unfolding.
Bianca Buertes, Peregrine Treasury Solutions, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate it here on SABC News. We'll continue to give you the latest then in local and international news right after the short ad break. I'll be back with a little bit more of that for you. Do stay tuned. You're on point.